Want to see a really cool guitar pickup?
When it comes to strange, weird old guitar pickups, it's hard to beat this National SingleBucker. These pickups were seen on guitars from people like National, Supro, Airline. You've seen them on Jack White's guitar. And what they were trying to do was emulate the look of a Gibson PAF humbucker, which at the time was the high-tech guitar pickup of its day. This being a pickup found on entry-level guitars, they wanted to emulate the look of the more expensive PAF, but not have to pay for it. If you're not used to dealing with oddball pickups, you might be confused at what you're looking at once you get this cover off. For example, the magnet structure on these pickups is a lot more akin to a Charlie Christian type pickup than either a PAF or even a P90. There are two rather large sand-cast Alnico magnets being forced against a steel plate that is bent and runs underneath the bobbin. Then pole screws screw through that plate and come up through the middle of the bobbin. And this completes our magnetic circuit. At the poles, the magnetic power isn't all that powerful. It's actually kind of weak, which would make you think this pickup would have a very low output. But it makes up for that with a pretty substantial winding. The winding goes around a bobbin that is cardboard, very thin cardstock, glued together. This makes disassembling this thing and reassembling it pretty tricky because you can crush the bobbin at any time when you're trying to cut the old wire off, or even when you're trying to rewind it. If you get the tension wrong and you don't have the pickup mounted properly to your winder, it can just crush the pickup winding altogether. The hookup wire that came with these old pickups was a kind of a cloth-covered pushback style wire. This tiny jumper is where you're supposed to hook up the hot lead of the coil. The other end of it's soldered to the frame, and that's how you complete your circuit. Once I get all the coil wire cleaned off the old paper bobbin, I like to put it in my vise and go over all the seams in this thing with super glue, just to reinforce things. The old glue that's on there is usually dried up and cracking, and it will not stand up to another rewind after 50 years of drying out. Once my glue is dried and it's ready to rewind, I like to reinforce it when I mount it to the winder with a hunk of phenolic like this. This is a rigid type of plastic, and it holds the outer flange so that it can't flare out as we're winding from the tension and the pressure of the coil, which will absolutely ruin your pickup. Once I'm done winding these, I go ahead and tape the coils on the winder and then very carefully remove it. Did I mention this thing had a fairly powerful coil? I place the bobbin on the magnetic frame and start putting the pole screws back in. I tend to over-tape these a little bit. I'm going to be running this one through the wax pot. The owner wanted it wax potted because they do tend to be a little microphonic. That's not original, but it's something he wanted, so it's something I'm going to do. Once the cover's back on and it's been through the potting process, it's time to give it a test run in my test guitar, the Booger. I actually recorded that process for you this time, so now you're going to get a chance to hear what this pickup sounded like after the rewind. Check it out. So that's about it for this little piece of historic weirdness. These are really, really sweet sounding pickups. If you get a hold of one, I highly recommend that you put it in a cool guitar and play it. This particular one headed back out to a shop where it was being installed in a national town and country. And I'm sure it's just rocking away right now.
Lack of available affordable parts in the 50s and 60s. meant that a company that wanted to introduce inexpensive entry-level guitar had to be pretty creative when coming up with their pickups. This old Silvertone has a lipstick pickup in it, which is a pretty odd one. The one you just finished watching, the National, also has an odd pickup in it. These days, a lot of those odd pickups are very sought after because they were so unique and so unusual that they offer tonal characteristics that just aren't available in your standard Fender, Gibson, Gretsch, Rickenbacker styles. So keep an eye out for those cool old Tescos and Nationals and Dan Electros and things like that. See you next time.